All right, so you want to know the real difference between Kitchener and Waterloo? Well, we've spent a ton of time putting this video together for you so that you know where you would truly feel at home. Yep, and did you know that despite being so close together, Kitchener and Waterloo have their own differences that can change your experience completely? So we've compared 9 key differences that'll help you pick the area that's right for you.
If you're on the fence about Kitchener or Waterloo, stick around to find out which one is right for you.
And the first topic is a big one, and that is the cost of housing.
Yes, so when we compare Waterloo with Kitchener in terms of those house prices, what we typically find is that Waterloo tends to be about 5% more expensive than Kitchener, and you could look at that as a pro or as a con.
Yeah, that's right. On the one hand, it's indicating to us that there is more demand for housing in Waterloo, but on the other hand, it means you can get more affordable housing in Kitchener, or you can get a bigger house for the same amount of money. And it's not just in terms of purchasing homes, the same goes with rental prices. We do find that Waterloo tends to be a little bit more expensive than Kitchener.
That's right, and sticking with the theme of Waterloo being a bit more expensive, when we look at property taxes as well, Waterloo does come in a little bit higher. A couple of reasons for that is that overall there are less residents in Waterloo to help pay for those taxes, and the city does tend to spend a little bit more than Kitchener does.
And that's not to say that Kitchener is not spending money. There's a lot of development happening in Kitchener and the whole Waterloo region. It's just that Kitchener does have a bigger population to pitch in towards that bill. Our next topic is community vibe.
Yeah, living in Waterloo myself, specifically in the uptown part of Waterloo, it can sometimes feel a little bit like a university town, especially if you head out during certain times where the universities are hosting events and there's students all over the place. However, if you do move outside of that pocket into areas like Laurelwood or Beechwood, Westvale, Eastbridge, lots of different communities around, those start to feel a little bit more suburban, and you have a lot of those family-friendly neighborhoods, good schools, all that sort of stuff. So Waterloo does have both sides of the coin.
Kitchener, on the other hand, tends to have a bit more of an urban vibe in downtown. We don't have as many students, so it's a bit of an older demographic there, and as well as some young professionals. And there's quite a bit of diversity in terms of lifestyles depending on the neighborhood that you choose to live in Kitchener. For example, I myself live in Kitchener, but I don't live downtown. I live in a nice older neighborhood called Forest Hill, you know, with lots of mature trees, and there's all sorts of different residents there. We have a lot of new families there, and we have a lot of people kind of switching over their homes because they're moving into a different phase of their life. So Kitchener, just like Waterloo, does have that downtown core, but minus the students. And then on the outskirts, you will find quite a bit more of the suburban lifestyle and family neighborhoods such as Huron, Doon, Lackner, just to name a few of those. So if this is something that you're looking for, or depending on your preferences for the area, if you tell us 2 or 3 things that are really important to you about what you're looking for, we can find the perfect spot for you, whether it's in Kitchener or Waterloo. Just reach out to us at the phone number on the screen, and then we can get you connected and set up.
On top of that great community vibe that Kitchener and Waterloo have, one big thing that brings a lot of people into our region is our great accessibility to the 401 and highways 7 and 8, which really connect the city quite well.
If you're somebody that needs to commute out of town for work, or having easy access to the highway is important to you, then you will probably want to choose to live in Kitchener over Waterloo because of its access. So let's take a quick look at the map here. So when we take a look at the map here, this right here is basically Waterloo, and then down here we have Kitchener for the most part. Highway 401 runs through here. So if you need access to Toronto, you're going in this direction. And as you can see, a lot of Kitchener is connected here by Highway 8 as well as Highway 7, which leads into Highway 8 here and gets you to the 401 for really easy access in terms of commuting. The other thing you'll see here is Highway 7, 8, which runs this way and then connects to Highway 85 and takes you out north. Most of that runs through Kitchener. So if you're living in Kitchener, you do have great access to the highway here. It doesn't really matter where in Kitchener you're living. It's pretty easy access. Whereas if you're looking at living in Waterloo, the northeast side does have good access to the highway. However, when you get into this western part of Waterloo, which is a little bit more suburban, you'll notice that your access to the highway is not as easy. It's a little bit more of a drag to get to the highway.
Now, while that northwestern part of Waterloo does have some limited access towards the highways, it's actually one of the most sought after areas in Waterloo, and there's a whole host of reasons for that. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that later in the video, but one of the small reasons is a lot of people that live there tend to work in the universities or in the tech hub around there, so they don't really need that highway access anyway. They can even get there without cars because we have a lot of great bus routes that get you connected to that area. And speaking of the great bus routes, that's another great accessibility feature of Waterloo and Kitchener as well. We have the GRT, Grand River Transit, that operates all of the local buses, and we also have the LRT or light rail transit, which connects all the way from Northwest Waterloo's Conestoga Mall to the east side of Kitchener to the Fairview Mall.
Yeah, so if public transit is something that's important to you, it really doesn't matter which of the two cities you pick, they are very well interconnected together. However, one area where Kitchener actually edges Waterloo out in terms of public transportation is our train station, which has the Via Rail as well as the GO train. So if you are commuting by train to work, you may find Kitchener a little bit more appealing in terms of that accessibility. A big deciding factor for people when they're picking which area to live in are parks and recreation, and that's something a lot of clients ask us about, which city has more, and in my opinion, I would say they both have a lot of green spaces and rec, so it's virtually a tie.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Kitchener or Waterloo when it comes to green space. In Waterloo particularly, you have Waterloo Park, which is an expansive park. It has a petting zoo, it has walking trails, it has a cricket field. It's also very close to the tennis club, so there's a lot of different things to do with Waterloo Park. You also have Laurel Creek Conservation Area, which has a whole host of family fun activities to do, and on top of that, each neighborhood has its own community park as well, so there's lots of green space, lots of outdoor activities that you can get done in Waterloo, and Kitchener is not short for parks either.
That's right, Kitchener has its own downtown park, which is Victoria Park. It has a big lake. The Boathouse, which is soon to be reopening, is a nice little restaurant there. A lot of walking trails, kids play areas, a splash pad, a lot of family fun there. And then we also have our own conservation area, the Huron Natural Conservation Area. It's got over 5 kilometers of trails that you can explore and just get out and connect with nature. And those are just a couple of examples for each city. Overall, there's a ton of different parks and trails you can explore. The Grand River winds around both of the cities, which has lots of trails around it as well. And if you look at Kitchener-Waterloo zoomed out, it literally looks like a city in a forest.
Now, one area where Kitchener and Waterloo are not tied would be their city cores. So uptown Waterloo, it's a consensus, is better than downtown Kitchener. It just has a cleaner, laid back, more charming feel with lots of friendly shops, coffee shops, small eateries, all sorts of stuff to do in uptown, whereas downtown tends to be a little bit more empty.
Yeah, it's a little bit rougher around the edges, downtown Kitchener. The streets aren't as full of people. There are restaurants and there are shops. A lot of them tend to close a little bit earlier. And unless you're there for an event that's being put on by the city, like let's say the Blues Fest or Oktoberfest, yeah, the streets are empty. There's not as many people there and it doesn't feel as safe as uptown Waterloo.
Yeah, in uptown Waterloo, there's always people walking around, especially on weekends, but even weeknights, there's always something happening, people walking around. And like I said, I live in uptown Waterloo, so I'm always going around for walks. It's really nice to explore that area.
Yeah, downtown Kitchener, ghost town, uptown Waterloo, it's actually got things happening. And it is a little bit confusing because there's a lot of condos downtown, so you would think there'd be more people there, but I find that people that want to go out they do tend to go to Uptown Waterloo even if they live downtown Kitchener. Speaking of preferences for Uptown Waterloo versus downtown Kitchener, one of the problems that we're experiencing in the region is the rise of homelessness. And a lot of that activity seems to be focused in the downtown Kitchener area. That's not to say that all the homeless people are from Kitchener. It's just where the tent city is located, happens to be in Kitchener. A lot of resources for those experiencing homelessness happen to be located in downtown Kitchener. And then Waterloo also likes to clean up their uptown by taking any of those people and shoving them back to Kitchener.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are a handful of homeless that you'll see in Uptown Waterloo as well. But like George said, a lot of them get placed in downtown Kitchener. A lot of the reason for that is that there are a lot of those resources for them in Kitchener. But yeah, generally speaking, Waterloo has much less homelessness visible, at least.
Yeah, the visibility of it is lower. It's not that it's not there. It's just much more visible in Kitchener, downtown Kitchener specifically.
One of the key areas that anyone would have to consider when they're looking for a new place to live is the safety of that area overall. So when we compare Kitchener and Waterloo, overall, both areas are extremely safe, especially in comparison to some other large cities. However, there will always be some small pockets that you should steer clear from. On an overall basis, we would probably say that Waterloo has less of those areas, whereas Kitchener has a few more. But again, overall, both are really, really good. But George, what's some examples in Kitchener that people might want to steer clear of?
Yeah, well, we talked about the downtown core, big parts of that I think people tend to steer clear from because they're both visually not appealing, and there is an increase in crime rates around some of those areas downtown. Around Tent City is one of the examples. And then if you look at the east end of downtown Kitchener, it's undergoing a lot of redevelopment right now, but that's generally considered a less safe area. And again, that's where some of the men's and women's shelters are located, and nothing against those folks. They obviously need a place to live, but that does tend to bring a little bit of lack of safety along with it. So that's sort of the quote-unquote dangerous areas in Kitchener. There's a couple other neighborhoods that we could guide you with to stay away from if you reach out to us and need some help finding them. But once you get outside of those areas, Kitchener has way more family-friendly and safe neighborhoods than ones that are not. There's lots of different areas that we can point you to that are great for raising kids or families or just your own personal safety overall.
When we're discussing shopping and those types of amenities, Kitchener and Waterloo come in at a virtual tie again. We each have a shopping mall, Conestoga Mall in Waterloo, Fairview Park Mall in Kitchener. We each have a Costco as well, which is very important. And we have Tim Hortons on every corner of the street. No, I'm just kidding, but there are enough Tim Hortons, don't worry.
Yeah, that's right. In terms of shopping amenities, it's about the same. Kitchener tends to have more of the big box stores, whereas Waterloo tends to have a little bit more on the boutique side of shopping for people. But like Vince said, pretty much tied. If shopping and amenities are important to you, you have access to both in both of the cities. Moving on to schools and education, what we found working with hundreds of different families relocating to this area is that for young families, picking a neighborhood with top-notch schools is one of the top priorities.
And this is why that northwest pocket of Waterloo is such a popular area. It has some of the best schools, not only in the city or the region, but in the province. We have schools like Laurelwood, Abraham Erb, and Vista Hills, all located within that region, and that draws a lot of families that value education for their little ones into that area.
Kitchener is also not lacking when it comes to education. There are lots of neighborhoods with top-rated schools. Lackner Woods is an area that comes to mind with the Chicopee Hills Public School as well as the Lackner Woods Public School, but that's just a couple. You will be able to find great schools in Kitchener as well. It's just that Waterloo has so many more of them. That concentration in the northwest corner is unlike anything we've seen.
Yeah, on top of that, Waterloo also has those two universities, the University of Waterloo and Wilfrid Laurier University. So that attracts a lot of people to the region that are thinking about university, but it's also really nice for those young families because they can come to an area, benefit from top-notch elementary schools, great high schools, and then they don't have to move out of the region or worry about their kids leaving home. They can save a lot of money having them live at home and still attending a top-notch great university program at either Waterloo or Laurier.
And Kitchener, on the other hand, has Conestoga College, which is one of the top colleges in Canada, so you get those same benefits by living there.
Overall, when we compare Waterloo and Kitchener, Waterloo does tend to come out on top in a lot of those categories. It does have the better schools. It has overall more safety. That downtown core lifestyle is a little bit more poppin' in Waterloo. And it does lead to those home prices being a little more expensive, but you do get what you paid for.
Yeah, Kitchener, on the other hand, you get a little bit more affordable housing, better access to the highway, and then better access to the GO train as well if you're someone who's a commuter, while still being able to find very safe neighborhoods with good schools.
Now, one important thing to note is that I'm from Waterloo, he's from Kitchener, but really we feel like we're from the same area because Kitchener and Waterloo oftentimes get lumped together and get known as Kitchener-Waterloo.
That's right, they're so well connected. You can get from the north end of Waterloo to the south end of Kitchener within 25 minutes driving, maybe an hour bus ride. We have the LRT, which connects the two cities. It runs through both downtowns and connects you to both of the regional malls.
That's right. Now, if you live in Waterloo and you need to access that GO train, it's a short drive away. Or on the other hand, if you live in Kitchener and you're looking for a nice place to go out with friends, you're just down the street from Waterloo's uptown. So really, no matter which pocket you live in, you can still get the best of both worlds from both cities.
We're curious, which one would you prefer to live in, Kitchener or Waterloo? Let us know down below in the comments. And if you need help picking a region or neighborhood, reach out to us at the phone number on the screen. We'd be happy to show you around Kitchener-Waterloo and find the best neighborhood for you.